Hello, good evening viewers. Market Headlines is ready to provide you information from business, economic and capital market sector. And as the pandemic is still ongoing, we will provide you the latest COVID-19 information. And please stay safe by taking some simple precautions such as physical distancing, wearing a mask, avoiding crowds, cleaning your hands and having less mobility. And with me, Fajar Wayong, this is Market Headline. Let's open up Market Headline. The government ensures that the excise rate on tobacco products or cigarette excise in 2022 will increase. The increase in the excise rate will be conveyed by the Ministry of Finance after the House of Representatives has approved the draft law on the state budget for the 2022 fiscal year. The government ensures that the excise rate on tobacco products or cigarette excise in 2022 will increase. Director of Technical and Excise Facilities at the Directorate General of Customs and Excise at the Ministry of Finance, Nirwala Dwi Haryanto, said that the ministry would soon announce it in the near future. Nirwala said that the 2022 cigarette excise rate increase will be submitted by the government after the House of Representatives has approved the draft law on the 2022 state budget. If it has been agreed, the government will immediately finalize the cigarette excise rate. As for the draft state budget for fiscal year 2022, the government sets excise revenues at 203.9 trillion rupiah. This figure jumped 11.84% against the outlook for excise revenues from the 2021 state budget of 182.2 trillion rupiah. Meanwhile, the government conveyed that the 2022 tobacco product excise policy would consider four main pillars, including controlling consumption, optimizing state revenues, labor sustainability, and the circulation of illegal cigarettes. The four reflect many interests in health, industry, agriculture, and labor. IDX Channel reports. Meantime, the discourse of increasing tobacco excise rate this year is increasingly burdensome for the tobacco industry and farmers. The Indonesian Tobacco Society Alliance, or AMTI, has also asked the government not to increase excise rates, which it fears will add a new wave of layoffs. The survival of millions of people who depend on the tobacco sector for their livelihoods is increasingly threatened if the government raises the excise tariff on tobacco products again this year. Spokesperson for the Indonesian Tobacco Society Alliance, or AMTI, Hananto, explained that the planned increase in tobacco excise rates has made a wave of new layoffs unstoppable. Moreover, around 3 million people who come from tobacco products industry workers, farmers to communities in tobacco producing areas will be directly affected by the policy, which is planned to be decided in October 2021. For this reason, AMTI also asked the government not to increase the excise rate on tobacco products because they will have a negative effect on about 3 million people who live from the tobacco products industry today. For this reason, AMTI also asked the government not to increase the excise tariff on tobacco products.
Terhadap wacana kenaikan juga di tahun 2022, kami berharap pemerintah betul-betul menimbang secara seksama, mengkaji secara komprehensif dengan mempertimbangkan situasi hari ini. Situasi di mana rakyat dihadapkan pada situasi yang serba sulit, daya beli masyarakat yang belum membaik, ketersediaan lapangan pekerjaan yang semakin sempit. Tentunya ini juga faktor menambahnya jumlah PHK yang terjadi di masa pandemi.
As is known, last year the government increased the tobacco excise rate to 12.5%. With this increase, the Directorate General of Customs estimates that this year the achievement of excise on tobacco products will reach 173 trillion rupiah. IDX Channel reports. The government, through the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, is optimistic that the new renewable energy mix will reach 23% by 2025. This is supported by the government's rooftop solar power plant utilization program. Director General of New Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Dadan Kusdiana, said that up to now, the new renewable energy mix is 11.2%. For this reason, in the next 4.5 years, the ministry will boost the renewable energy mix target. Dadan said in addition to providing incentives for all parties who develop new renewable energy to reduce greenhouse gases, the ministry also boosts the development of new renewable energy through the use of rooftop solar power plants.
PL tetap kami menyebutnya megawatt. Ya. Nah yang ketiga adalah PLTS atap kami menyebutnya. Jadi pemanfaatan PLTS yang dipasang di atap, yang dipasang di atap dikembangkan oleh konsumen, baik itu konsumen PLN maupun konsumen Wilus lainnya. Nah ini yang pemerintah sedang melakukan finalisasi dari sisi regulasi, permennya sedang disiapkan untuk merevisi permen yang sudah ada sekarang.
In addition, the government continues to develop solar power plants through small-scale solar power plants for people who do not have electricity, to large-scale power plants such as the construction of the Cirata floating solar power plant. IDX Channel reports. And we're moving on to global update. The U.S. Central Bank could begin withdrawing stimulus this year as the economy rebounds, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has said. Meantime, from Asia, Singapore has fully inoculated 80% of its 5.7 million people against COVID-19. More stories on today's International Minute. The U.S. Central Bank could begin withdrawing stimulus this year as the economy rebounds, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has said. However, he said the bank was in no rush to raise interest rates despite a recent spike in inflation. The U.S. economy contracted sharply during the pandemic, but has bounced back strongly in 2021. The U.S. city of New Orleans has lost power with only generators working as Hurricane Ida batters Louisiana. The storm brought 150 miles per hour winds when it made landfall, and those people who did not flee have been advised to shelter in place. Ida will task New Orleans flood defenses strengthened after Hurricane Katrina killed 1,800 people in 2005. OPEC and its allies are expected to press on with their planned revival of oil production when they meet next week as prices bounce back from their August tumble. The coalition led by Saudi Arabia and Russia is gradually restoring the vast amount of crude production halted during the pandemic and will probably ratify the next monthly installment when it gathers on September 1st. Singapore has fully inoculated 80% of its 5.7 million people against COVID-19, becoming the world's most vaccinated country and setting the stage for further easing of curbs that gives the tiny city-state the world's highest rate of complete vaccinations, according to a tracker by the Reuters news agency. Other countries that have high vaccination rates include the United Arab Emirates, Uruguay, and Chile. IDX Channel reports. Market headlines will be right back with Deep Insight segment. Stay tuned.
Presiden Joko Widodo memiliki optimisme yang tinggi terkait dengan proses vaksinasi nasional yang sedang dilakukan saat ini. Bagaimana tanggapan dari pengusaha dengan angka ini?
Tentu membuat kita harus lebih berhati-hati.
Langkah apa yang tepat dilakukan untuk bisa meningkatkan pemahaman masyarakat?
Komunikasi publik adalah kunci. Jadi kita harus bisa menunjukkan kepada masyarakat bahwa vaksinasi itu penting.
Aku akan tunjukkan untuk kalian semua, aku nggak perlu membalas, tapi you see me, let's see, you see me, let's see, you can see me soon, what I'm doing.
Nah, sejauh ini kritikan terpedas yang pernah diterima apa, Kak?
Kayak gini, aku pernah gini, narimu jelek, gak bagus, apa sih, kamu jadi penari kayak begitu, aku udah pernah yang kayak gitu.
And we
Wilayah kerja minyak dan gas bumi, Rokan, kembali ke pangkuan Ibu Pertiwi. Presiden Joko Widodo kemarin meluncurkan sistem online single submission atau OSS berbasis risiko di Kementerian Investasi. Jadi untuk jadi pengusaha gitu, tapi kalau perizinannya susah, ya nggak jadi. Gitu.
Pelaku usaha lokal juga ini kan merasa didukung ya, dan ketika para pelaku usaha ini bisa tumbuh, ini kan juga bisa mendorong perekonomian pada akhirnya, betul ya?
Biar komitmen itu menjadi realisasi investasi.
Indonesia dipastikan sudah terlepas dari jurang resesi ekonomi setelah berhasil tumbuh positif.
Pemerintah melihat bahwa Q4 adalah potensi untuk kita membalikkan keadaan kembali. Kita memperkirakan
From today's Deep Inside coverage, the government took over the rights to control 49 plots of 5.2 million square meters of land owned by obligors and debtors who received the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance or BLBI. One of the assets taken over by the government is property assets in Lipo Karawaci, Tangerang with an area of 25 hectares. The Minister of Finance as well as the steering committee of the task force for handling state claims for the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance Fund or BLBI, Sri Mulyani, say that currently the government has confiscated land in the Lipo Karawaci area. Sri Mulyani said it was recorded that there were state assets from the BLBI case that were used by third parties without the permission of the Minister of Finance. BLBI assets worth 1.33 trillion rupiah have been owned by the state for a long time. Therefore, the BLBI task force has sent a warning letter. The property is located in Lipo Karawaci, Tangerang. The BLBI task force also put up a sign to mark the control of the assets.
Beberapa aset yang hari ini akan dilakukan penguasaan, tadi ada 49 bidang tanah yang terletak di 4 titik lokasi. Luasnya 5.291.200 meter persegi. Lokasinya tadi ada di Medan, di Pekanbaru, di Bogor, dan hari ini kita hadir secara fisik di Tangerang, Karawaci. Aset-aset properti yang saat ini berada di Lipo Karawaci, luasnya 25 hektar. Menurut Pak Bupati katanya 1 meter persegi sekarang 20 juta ya Pak ya. Jadi kita pasti 25 hektar ini nilainya triliunan.
The former managing director of the World Bank say that the BLBI task force continues to try to seize assets from obligors or debtors that have not been controlled by the state. Meantime, after being expropriated, the assets will be settled and recovered as a form of BLBI compensation that was paid 22 years ago. The land in Lipo Karawaci has been handed over to the National Bank Restructuring Agency. IDX Channel reports. And regarding the takeover of 25 hectares of land in Karawaci, Tangerang by the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance Task Force, the management of Lipo Karawaci provided clarification. Management stated that the 25 hectares of land had been legally owned by the government since 2001. So management emphasized that the takeover was not a confiscation or land grabbing. Regarding the takeover of 25 hectares of land in Karawaci, Tangerang by the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance Task Force, the Coordinating Minister for Political, Legal and Security Affairs, Mahfud MD, in an official statement said that the land is a property asset of former Bank Lipo debtors, which is used as a deduction from Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance obligations.
Saat ini kita berada di salah satu aset properti yang telah dikuasai oleh negara, yaitu aset properti ex-debitur PT Lipo Karawaci, ex-Bank Lipo Group yang diserahkan kepada BPPN sebagai pengurang kewajiban WLBI. Aset ini terdiri dari 44 bidang tanah dengan luas 251.992 meter persegi.
However, Danang Kemayanjati, head of corporate communications of Lipo Karawaci, clarified the land that was reportedly confiscated is land that has been legally owned and controlled by the government since 2001. So the takeover of the land is not a confiscation or land grabbing. He said the ownership was related to the BLBI's ownership of the bank, which was taken over by the government during the 1997 monetary crisis. He said none of Lipo's companies, including Bank Lipo, had ever asked for or received a single cent of BLBI funds. However, his party continues to support the government's program to consolidate certain assets belonging to the Ministry of Finance and the newly formed tax force. IDX Channel reports. Meantime, Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati stated that until now, the government still bears the burden of BLBI debt and interest, where the amount of debt owed to obligors and debtors is 110.45 trillion rupiah. Meanwhile, Transparency International Indonesia doubted that the government's way of resolving the BLBI scandal by summoning obligors would be effective. Doubts were also raised over the ability of the BLBI task force to track and seize assets of obligors and debtors. The government, through the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance Task Force, confiscated the assets of BLBI obligors and debtors. One of the assets confiscated were building and land assets. Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati said the series of taking or confiscation of assets was in the context of the government reducing compensation for banking rescue measures.
Bantuan likuiditas itu dibiayai dalam bentuk surat utang negara, yaitu surat utang negara yang diterbitkan oleh pemerintah yang sampai sekarang masih dipegang oleh Bank Indonesia. Dan pemerintah selama 22 tahun tentu dalam hal ini selain membayar pokoknya juga membayar bunga utangnya. Karena sebagian dari BLBI itu ada yang menggunakan tingkat suku bunga yang memang sebagian kemudian dinegosiasikan.
Sri Mulyani said the government for 22 years, besides paying the principal, also paid the interest on the debt. This is because some of the BLBI use interest rates which are partly negotiated. Overall, the amount of debt owed to BLBI obligors and debtors is 110.45 trillion rupiah. She also hopes that the BLBI task force will be able to get the compensation back as much as possible. In addition, the government has also summoned several obligors of debtors. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Transparency International Indonesia researcher Alvin Nicola doubts that the government way of resolving the Bank Indonesia liquidity assistance case by summoning obligors will be effective. Alvin also doubts the ability of DLBI task force in tracking and seizing the assets of obligors and debtors. Moreover, their assets are scattered abroad. IDX Channel reports. And talking about the BLBI case, how did this case actually start, which is said to have harmed the state of more than 130 trillion rupiah, not to mention the fraud committed by 28 BLBI recipients with a value of 54 trillion rupiah. And to find out more clearly, here is the complete chronology of the BLBI case. Quoting from various sources, the BLBI case is an old case which is a legacy of the 1998 monetary crisis. During that period, a number of banks experienced liquidity problems due to the monetary crisis, which caused the rupiah exchange rate to depreciate deeply to reach 15,000 rupiah per US dollar. The impact of the fall of the rupiah, the foreign currency debt of banks swelled. Anticipating the impact on the economy, the government and Bank Indonesia agreed to share the burden. Through the Bank Indonesia Liquidity Assistance Program, the central bank disbursed funds amounting to 147.7 trillion rupiah to 48 banks that nearly collapsed due to the 1998 economic crisis. With a note, the funds lent must be returned to the state. Unfortunately, 20 years have passed and not all obligors and debtors have returned the BLBI funds. In an official statement from the Ministry of Finance, BLBI cost the state 138.442 trillion rupiah. Of the 144.536 trillion rupiah, BLBI distributed based on the audit results of the Supreme Audit Agency. The first verdicts for the defendants in the BLBI scandal occurred in 2003, which were handed down to unscrupulous BI officials who conspired with bank owners. At the time, a number of BI officials such as Hendro Budianto, Heru Supratomo, and Paul Sutopo Cokronegoro were thrown into prison. In addition, a number of tycoons and bank officials also received a verdict from the court in that case. However, in April 2021, the Corruption Eradication Commission decided to stop investigating cases of criminal acts assisted by BLBI. Nevertheless, the investigation into the BLBI case has not ended, but has turned to the BLBI Task Force, which was formed by the Joko Widodo government in April 2021. Coordinating Minister for Political, Legal and Security Affairs Mahmud MD, as chair of the BLBI Task Force Steering Committee, ensures that the BLBI Task Force will collect all debts owed by obligors and debtors. The BLBI Task Force said it had pocketed all the names of BLBI obligors and debtors. IDX Channel reports. Stay with us because market headlines will be back after this quick break.
Bagaimana tanggapan dari pengusaha dengan angka ini?
Tentu membuat kita harus lebih berhati-hati.
Langkah apa yang tepat?
Jadi kita harus bisa menunjukkan kepada masyarakat bahwa vaksinasi itu penting.
Awali hari Anda dengan beragam informasi bisnis terkini yang kami kemas dalam berita teraktual dan berkualitas. News Screen Morning menyajikan informasi ekonomi, bisnis, dan keuangan. News Screen Evening mengulas seputar ekonomi makro dan mikro, fiskal, moneter, dan sektorial Indonesia. Market Headline menayangkan berita ekonomi dan bisnis dalam bahasa Inggris. Saksikan program-program berita ekonomi dan bisnis terkini langsung dari sumbernya, live hanya di IDX Channel. Your Trustworthy Economic, Business, and Capital Market Channel.
Aku akan tunjukkan ke kalian semua, aku nggak perlu membalas, tapi you see me, let's see, you can see me soon, but I'm doing.
Nah, sejauh ini kritikan terpedas yang pernah diterima apa, Kak?
Kayak gini, aku pernah gini, narimu jelek, gak bagus, apa sih, kamu jadi penari kayak begitu, aku udah pernah yang kayak gitu.
Kebijakan PPKM darurat akan berdampak besar pada pendapatan masyarakat.
Dampak lonjakan kasus COVID-19 yang ternyata menyebabkan daya beli masyarakat semakin melemah.
Berdasarkan pengamatan 90 kota, terjadi deflasi sebesar 0,16%.
Nah, ini terkait dengan investasi, bagaimana sebetulnya dinamika investasi di tengah pandemi dan PPKM darurat, Mang?
Sebenarnya bahan ini
Welcome back. At the Jakarta Composite Index intraday movement earlier today, JCI was open at the level of 6,062.11, and then approaching the closing time on the first session. The index was on the level of 6,112.85, and then the index was showing strengthening trend by the second session closing time. Index was closed at level 6,144.9. In short, JCI went up 1.71%. And next, we're going to see the sectoral movement. Leading the dynamics of today's trading, we got industry as the leader of strengthening trend that went up 3.41%. Infrastructure went up 2.45%. Basic industry went up 2.39%, and health went up 1.87%. And moving on to top gainers and top losers, here are the key highlights from today's trading session. BBRI went up 2.6%. ARTO went up 1.29%. BABP went up 3.21%. BBYB went up 2.52%. Meantime, the top losers for today's trading, we got BBKP went down 2.8%. DMMX went down 2.64%. Kota went down 1% to the level of 198 rupiah per share. BGTG went down 5.51%. And next, we're going to see the intraday movement of rupiah towards US dollar. Open at the level of 14,431 rupiah, also showing strengthening trend towards US dollar, and was closed at the level of 14,389. In summary, rupiah went up 0.43%. Although business income decreased, Wijaya Karya Beton or Wika Beton posted profit growth in the first semester of 2021. The company's profit grew to 37.99 billion rupiah or 3.68% higher than the same period of the previous year. Based on financial statements, the company's income reached 1.25 trillion rupiah or down 32.63% compared to the same period of the previous year. One of the causes of the increase in profit came from the recovery of financial instruments. Previously, Wika Beton officially conducted the first global expansion by exporting pieces to Taiwan. This product was planned to be used in infrastructure projects conducted by the Taiwan government. Wika Beton follows the success of Wika Industri Konstruksi, which also exports steel girder structures for bridge projects in the Philippines. Step aside from market condition as the efforts in achieving herd immunity is still going on. Here it is an update data about COVID-19 vaccinations in Indonesia. And the news close our market headlines today. Please enjoy our next program on IDX Channel, Your Trustworthy Economic, Business and Capital Market Channel. And as the COVID-19 pandemic is still going on, keep protecting your family by following the health protocols, wearing face masks, keep your distance and stay away from crowds, wash your hands through running water, and also continue to support the vaccination program to accelerate the creation of herd immunity. I'm Fajar Wayong. Have a nice evening and stay safe.